10 months.
May bago pa nito. Init pa. Mabalis. Tagpila gani. Mabay ko sa sim sa ito.
Ng meeting ko rin.
Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on strengthening climate resilience of Philippine water service providers. I'm honored to serve as your host for today's program. I'm Sarah Espina from NWRB, and we are grateful to all of you joining us via Zoom and Facebook Live, especially our representatives from local government units, water districts, rural water utilities, private water service providers, national government agencies, development partners, academe, and civil society organizations. We have a wide range of audience from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao today. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. We'd like to acknowledge the presence of the general managers who are present here today, the company presidents. Maraming salamat po for joining us. Today's gathering is very timely. Across the country, our water sector continues to face prolonged droughts, stronger typhoons, flooding, saltwater intrusion, and increasing pressure on water supply systems. These realities remind us that climate resilience is no longer optional. It is now an essential part of water governance and service delivery. This morning, we will hear insights from experts and practitioners who will help us better understand climate risks, learn from international experiences, and explore practical and realistic actions that can be applied in our own communities and water systems. Without further ado, let us formally begin our program. May I request everyone to settle down and direct your attention to your screens for the invocation and singing of our Philippine national anthem.
Heavenly Father, we come before you today with grateful hearts, thanking you for the gift of this time together. We ask for your guidance as we gather to discuss, plan, and make decisions. Fill our minds with wisdom and understanding, and our hearts with patience and compassion for one another. Help us to speak with clarity, listen with open minds, and work together in unity. May our efforts today be pleasing to you and bear fruit that honors you. Bless this conference, Lord, and may your will be done in all that we do. In Jesus' name, we pray, amen.
Thank you, everyone. Let us all be settled. Once again, the National Water Resources Board, together with the Global Water Solutions Incorporated, welcomes everyone to the webinar on strengthening climate resilience of Philippine water service providers. I-remind po namin yung iba nating mga kasamahan. If some of your colleagues have not registered via Zoom, they can enter or they can watch us through our Facebook Live in National Water Resources Board Facebook page. Thank you po. To open today's event, we are honored to have with us today the Assistant Secretary for Infrastructure Development of the Department of Economy, Planning and Development, ASEC, Roderick M. Planta. Sir, nakamute po kayo. Yan,
Yeah,
sir.
thank you. Yeah, I was not allowed to unmute myself. So thank you, Miss Claire. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, water friends. Thank you, NWRB and GWSI to grace this opening remarks. Hello to our GMs, LGUs, water districts. See you soon po. But let me be allowed to share some. Yeah, apologies po. Hindi po resilient ang aming internet connection. Jay or Miss Claire, if you could my PowerPoint in lieu of an opening remarks. Yeah, so well, I guess just to give a proper context at the macro level, yung our plans and policies, the many things that we've done collectively throughout the years. Sige po. Next slide, please. So I think everybody remembers this Philippine Water Supply and Sanitation Master Plan, which we did prior to this coming administration. And we have 8 KRAs for this master plan with some 200 plus specific actions that needs to be undertaken to achieve water supply and sanitation for all by 2030. So ito po yung ating SDG 6 master plan. Okay, next slide. My next slide is just saying that all this, the master plan, the PWSSMP, found its way to our Philippine Development Plan, which was approved at the start of the administration, December 16, 2022. And we all know what the Philippine Development plan is and the overall goal, which is as shown on the screen. Okay, next slide. And after the Philippine Development Plan, we crafted the formulated the Philippine Development Plan. At some point, WRMO, headed by USEC CP David, was created. And shortly thereafter, we crafted
Hello sir, tumatawag ka? Yes sir. Okay, okay. Oh, wala na si Tom.
Mukhang good morning po sa lahat. We're just waiting for ASEC to be reconnected. Sandali lang po. While waiting, yung mga nakakapasok lang po, please fill out our attendance sheet and pre-test survey form. And also, yung mga, ulitin ko po, yung mga hindi nakapasok sa Zoom, pwede pong magpunta sa aming Facebook page, National Water Resources Board. Makikita niyo po doon ang ating live video. Pwede pong sabihin sa ating mga friends and colleagues. Okay po, while we are waiting
Yeah, okay,
for... Ay,
I'm back. I'm very sorry. Something wrong with our internet connection. So, okay, so I was talking about the IWMP. Thank you for for the filler. Some of the remarks says that I cannot be heard, but I think loud and clear, at least for some of the laptops here. So, yeah, so what can be delivered the short term, but not going back on the SDG 6 game plan of achieving water sanitation, water supply and sanitation for all by 2030. Okay, next slide, please. And these are the strategies under the Philippine Development Plan. As I've said, all those things that what is in the PWSSMP found its way to the PDP. Okay, so broad strokes, upgrading and of an expansion of water infra, strengthening of IWRM, and then encouraging investments in water-related initiatives. Okay, next slide, please. We also had a policy note on the Philippine water sector, which, as you know, to address the fragmented governance institutions, basically we want a creation of the WR and WRC. So consistent po naman to sa mga plans natin ever since. Okay, next slide. And then we have this Philippine development report. Basically, the Philippine development report shows yung accomplishments natin collectively in terms of the Philippine development plan. So I just captured here yung sa particular sa ating sector, yung mga themes na kailangan gawin, yung mga accomplishments natin. Sige, next slide please. It's again a restatement kasi 2024 was the midterm of the Philippine Development Plan. So what do we intend to do for the rest or the remaining years of the development plans? More of the same pero sharper again, but still not going back on the reform agenda in the WR, WRC, optimizing water resource utilization, data for informed decision making and whatnot. Okay, next slide. Now, along the way, an executive order 72 was issued in 2024, basically saying that all master plans has to be harmonized, rationalized, and there's a vetting process for that. So dadaan po lahat ng master plans ng infra sa Infrastructure Committee of the ED Council. So hindi na po kanya-kanyang diskarte. So we have to, even in the water sector, but infra is big, but technically even in the water sector, hindi na po kanya-kanyang kumpas yung mga departments natin. So okay, next slide. And apart from the vetting process, we said that if you do master plans for all in the infra sector, dapat maraming may elements siya that is comparable or for all ating master plans that need to be submitted to DepDev. So the usual analytical foundations, spatial planning, environment, social safeguards, the institutions, the governance, and the policy framework, and of course at some point projects and programs at the end of the day. Sige, next slide po. Now, let me segue that kasi yung EU72, this is our, at some point, NEDA became DepDev, and one of our tasks under this Republic Act is the long-term vision formulation. So if you recall the Ambition 2040, dati ginawa lang po namin yun without really having a mandate for that. Ngayon, mandated na po talaga yan. Nasa charter na po namin yan, yung vision, and then a framework, long-term development framework. And then next slide, please. This is what what's in store for us for the next few years. We are also tasked to develop the comprehensive infra development master plan. So infra meaning all of the infra sectors, which goes to my next slide, please. So what is this initials again? It's the integrated national infra master plan. It covers all infra sectors and all these things that we want to see in a resilient, sustainable master plans. Again, next slide po. So we're just showing how this CIDMP is connected to all these things that we're doing, the long-term development framework, and the downstream part of it. At some point, we need an infrastructure investment pipeline, which means hindi lang po sa ating water resources sector, but also for the other infra subsectors and whatnot. But kasama po dito yan, yung to your right side, what this intends to do, yung CIDMP po natin. Obviously, we need better coordination across agencies. Kailangan po ng cyclical linkage ng planning, investment programming, and budgeting, and also implementation and monitoring and evaluation. But we want also that the gaps and the priority investments need to be there. Sige, next slide. Yung what CIDP is and sustainable infra, sige, need not go here. Basta all the essential elements are there. Okay, next slide please. So ito lang po itong formulation ng game plan namin. We intend to have something by year end, but the full-blown report by the end of the year. And my next slide will be my concluding slide. So ang sabi ko kanina, from plans and policies to results. So ang hinagip ko lang po yung macro because I think my teammates, si Yusek CP David will tell us more what's happening in the sector. Hinagip ko lang po yung sa macro, and what we're saying is that we're building from a strength to strength and delivering meaningful results at the macro level, at makikita nyo po yan. It's not as fast as we want it to be, but we're in a better place now than 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I guess, but we need to do more. So maraming salamat po sa lahat.
Thank you very much, Ate Planta, for setting the tone of today's discussion and for reminding us that resilience begins with policies, planning, coordination, collective action, going to results. Maraming salamat po, ASEC. And now our next speaker is a strong advocate of sustainable environmental governance and integrated water resources management. To deliver the keynote message, let us welcome the Undersecretary for Integrated Environmental Science of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Yusek Carlos Primo David. Good morning, sir.
Hi, good morning everybody. I hope my internet is much better than DepDev's. Okay ba? Am I clear?
Yes, sir. Clear po.
Okay, salamat. Good morning mula sa Water Resources Management Office of the DNR. I see that there are a lot of participants from the water districts, mga GMs and board members. Good morning sa inyo. Also, LGU run systems and private water service providers, and of course, our colleagues from GWSI, and also colleagues from the national government. I wish everyone a fruitful discussion this morning when we talk about climate resilience. Let me share my slides. Apat lang yung slides ko, unlike Asik Eric's. So maikli lang to. When we talk about resilience, can you now see my slide? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When we talk about resilience,
Presentation mode na lang po. Ayan. Thank you
yeah.
po.
So again, no, when we talk about resilience, I think it's not just a matter of resilience to changes in the climate. No, it has to be resilience overall, including pressures from external sources like the oil crisis, even political changes should be considered. No, in fact, when we talk about resilience, it is imperative that it has to be planned way ahead of time. Unfortunately, we're always caught off guard, such as in this case. Now, this year we foresee a strong El Nino towards the second half of the year. Ngayon lang yung preparation natin. I think preparation so that our water systems become resilient has to happen way before any impact on our infrastructure and our management of water. It has to be done way ahead of time. Nevertheless, because we are now facing another El Nino phenomenon this year, we now have crafted the 2026 National Action Plan for Water uh, for the water sector. No, this action plan is quite short, no, and the implementing agencies are those all within the DNR initially, but this will be cascaded down to all water service providers. Ano ba yung laman ng action plan? Very simple. We optimize the allocation of available water. No, we reduce the losses that we see in our system and promote efficient water use and conservation. We strengthen our monitoring and early warning mechanisms and enhance our coordination among the different agencies. This will be cascaded down by the respective regulators, MWSS for Metro Manila, NWRB for the private water service providers, and through LUA for the water districts. Each of these subsectors of the water sector will have to plan on their own in order for us to not be as affected, no, as in the past by this new phenomenon that we are facing this year. Now, in terms of overall resiliency, no, beyond just the El Nino this year, how I see the problem is three-pronged. Number one, our system has to be resilient in terms of the physical supply. May volume ba ng tubig na pwedeng paggamitan? Dahil wala tayong pag-uusapan ng governance or even distribution of water if there is no physical supply. Second, water distribution in terms of infrastructure is very important. And last but not least, na banggit na to ni Asik Eric, the governance aspect of the water sector. Let me start with the physical supply. Is there enough water in the Philippines to be able to meet the requirements of the various sectors requiring water, irrigation, drinking water, power, aquaculture, and so on and so forth? And the answer is yes. In fact, there is too much water, except for the fact that the distribution of water through rainfall has now been shifted to having too much water during the rainy season and too little water during the dry season. Yan ang impact ng climate change sa atin. And so in terms of climate resilience, this very fact is what we need to actually address. And how to address the variance of rainfall over a 1-year period is quite simple. And everyone knows this. Make sure that we impound the water when it is abundant during the rainy season, so that there is water that we can use during the dry season. It's very simple, except for the fact that we have not done so in the past. Unlike our neighbors, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Thailand, they all recognize this fact. And so they have invested in a lot of infrastructure that will capture water when it is abundant, so that there is water that we can use, that they can use during the dry season. So impoundment is key in my opinion, and this is not just in terms of large dams, which Korea and Japan have invested in. I think there are also multiple locations that we can have large dams. But what we are promoting here in DNR are small to medium-sized dams, 5-meter dams. You can see one of them in the picture there. In the middle, this is a mini dam that we constructed last year. No, now operational this year. This 4-meter dam, enough for 3 barangays in the island of Homonhon in Samar. Okay. Second, multipurpose use facilities. There is a strategy that we have promoted, no? DepDev, DOF, NIA, and the DNR to actually construct facilities for multipurpose use. And what I'm talking here about are, for example, NIA dams that provide water for irrigation, but also drinking water for the nearby communities. This is an ongoing project. There are several that are online already. There's one in Cavite, in Midsayap, and about half a dozen NIA dams that are now being studied for bulk water supply, in 6 locations, including one in Baliwag, one in Florida Blanca in Pampanga. There's one in Negros Occidental, Catarman, and so on and so forth. Maraming opportunities yan. And we also enjoin the private sector to look into this, to develop existing NIA facilities into bulk water supply. Number 3, diversification of sources. We are promoting several sources of water so that your system becomes resilient in case one of your sources become affected by, let's say, El Nino. One program that we have here in the DNR is to tap the subsurface flow underneath the rivers. This is called the hyporic water. And we have issued the guidelines on how to apply for the permit for that water, and also guidelines for extraction. In terms of distribution, it is only in 2024 that DNR became an infrastructure department. Alam natin ang DPWH and the other departments do actual infra. But in 2024, we were given a budget for water supply infrastructure. Maliit lang yung budget ng DNR, but we make the most out of it. In fact, I see it as a challenge that we are only provided a budget for water infrastructure for the whole country equivalent to the budget of one flood control project, which is 150 million pesos. Maliit lang yung budget, but it's a challenge. And what I wanted to prove to government and everybody is that even with that small amount of money, we are able to provide impact. In fact, over the last 3 years, we were given that budget of 150 million per year, so 450 roughly for 3 years. We are poised to provide potable water to about 400,000 Filipinos, with that 450 million peso budget through different projects. Many of them are with water districts. So there is now that government support for water supply, including those that go to DILG. They also have a water supply program, and we can make the most out of it if it is a coordinated effort with government agencies, water districts, and LGUs. Finally, in terms of governance, this is my last slide. Daming policies, that I think make the water sector a little bit more proactive and at the same time more efficient. Maraming policies dyan, if you can just read through that list of different policies in NWRB, in LUA, in DNR. We try to simplify the permitting process, no? Mas madali na. One issue, recurring issue that we have solved already is that when water service providers are unable to apply for a water permit kasi walang titulo yung lupa. Hindi na kailangan ng titulo. All that is needed for you to be able to apply for a water permit and for an ECC is an affidavit of continuous possession of the land. Ganun na lang. Hindi na kailangan ng titulo. And then we reduce some of the requirements for water permits, including lalo na yung mga community-based water supply systems. Hindi na namin yan kailangang bisitahin bago pa ibigay yung permit. Pampatagal lang yung mga proseso na yan. And so we try to simplify them. Last but not least, regulatory policies in terms of water tariff. Kaya lang di pa siya napapasa, no? For example, we are promoting a inflation-based tariff adjustment on a yearly basis, lalo na kung may mga oil crisis na tayong nararanasan. Kailangan makapag-adjust ng water rates, no? Like the power sector, yung buong water sector. The adjustments are required for us to be able to make sure that we are able to cope with expenses. No, hindi pwedeng palugi ang water supply system dahil hindi yan mag-i-improve at hindi natin ma-maintain. So, I think I've mentioned a lot already. Many of these things will have to be discussed, no, during the discussion later on. But I hope that you've seen some of the work and some of the progress that we are making in the water sector together with all our partners from government, from the LGUs, and the private sector. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, sir. Salamat po for sharing with us the action plan, 2026 El Nino Action Plan, and also the solutions to be done in the identified three-pronged challenges in the water sector. Thank you very much, Yusek. And now, we go to the meat of our discussions today. But before that, I would like to reiterate that in sending your questions to our speakers and panelists, please provide your name, your question, and to which speaker it is addressed to. For those inside the Zoom meeting, there's a link to be found in the chat box. While for those in Facebook, please scan the QR code to be seen on your screen. And to help us better understand the broader climate situation affecting the Philippines, our next session will provide an overview of the country's climate outlook and the risks facing our communities and water systems. Our speaker is a distinguished leader in environmental governance and sustainable development with extensive experience across Asia and the Pacific. She served as chair of the Asian Development Bank's Compliance Review Panel and head of the Office of the Compliance Review Panel from 2019 to 2024, ensuring accountability in major development projects. Ms. Gozon also held senior roles in the World Bank, USAID, and ADB, contributing to national master plans on water, sanitation, climate resiliency, and urban development. She was Secretary of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Presidential Advisor on Climate Change, and in 2007 was honored as Global Champion of the Earth by the United Nations Environment Program. Please welcome Ma'am Elisea Bibet Gozon. Hi, ma'am. Good morning.
Maraming salamat, Claire. Yes. Undersecretary Sipu David, Asik Eric Planta, Director Bill, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, friends and partners in pushing for sustainable development. Isang maganda at makalikasang umaga sa inyong lahat. I'm supposed to present to you the context for why we are having this particular seminar. My screen, please. And my presentation in the second slide, we'll actually cover the following. From the objectives of this workshop to the Pag-asa updates, the extreme climate conditions, definitions, and the need to build resiliency. Pag-asa has recently issued their advisory that the La Nina has, in the next slide, that it has actually ended as, on the objectives first. We're here to raise awareness about the impacts of this extreme weather and understand what needs to be done, learn from the lessons of international and local experiences, and identify concrete measures that can actually be undertaken with the end in view of actually strengthening the climate resiliency of all our water service providers. Now, this becomes imperative. Go to the next slide. This becomes imperative considering that Pag-asa already issued their advisories that La Nina already ended as of March 9, and on March 25, there was an increasing probability of El Nino, which a month later, almost a month later, was pegged at a 79% chance of developing by June to August. And thereafter, we will have below normal rainfall at magiging prolonged ang ating drought risk. Now, why is this happening? If we can move to the next slide, this is a phenomenon called ENSO. It's actually a naturally occurring phenomena sa climate system natin, ano? Ito because of the interaction of the ocean and our atmosphere here in the central and eastern equatorial Pacific. Next slide. And the ENSO actually has three phases. One is what's called, next slide, the ENSO neutral, which is the average temperature. And the warm phase is what is called El Nino. Unusually warm ang El Nino. At ang La Nina naman is the unusual cooling in our particular region. Now, how will we know na meron na tayong El Nino? In the next slide, we will see that if the temperature goes up by 0.5 degrees centigrade or higher than average, and when the winds from the east or from the west are much less, the winds are weak, then we are in an El Nino. No? And on the other hand, ang La Nina naman is when the temperatures are cooler by at least 0.5 degrees centigrade. And there are stronger winds from the east. And because of this, as we will see in the next slide, we have La Nina. Now, take note in that slide that we just passed, that El Nino and La Nina, natural phenomena nga kasi. So, hindi ito once in a lifetime nangyayari. The El Nino, if you can go back to that slide, please, happens on a regular basis, ranging from 2 to 7 years. The slide before that, please, before this, if you can just show it. And next, that one. And the strongest El Nino is usually every 10 to 15 years. Take note that for the Philippines, our last strong El Nino was actually 2015. So talagang within the time frame tayo kasi we are now 11 years after our last El Nino, strong El Nino. Ang La Nina naman occurs every 3 to 4 years. Given this, sa totoo lang, kaya nga nang sinabi ni CP, dapat naghanda na tayo, ready na tayo, whatever the climate conditions will be. But unfortunately, long-term planning and anticipation of this is medyo kulang talaga sa atin sa Pilipinas. So at the very least, we should already be preparing now. So, next slide. So, sa El Nino, ano naman, how can we show this? During an El Nino, the waters from the Pacific are very warm, but the winds are weak. So, hindi nila matulak yung mainit na hangin papunta sa west where we are, no? And because of that, kumakalat lang yung warmer waters dun sa area. And as we know, basic science, pag mainit, grabe ang evaporation. So the clouds form far from the Philippines. At doon din yung mga ulan. And that's why we get less rain. Next. Anong epekto nito? We have a delayed onset of the rainy season and instead an extended dry season. No, we also have above normal air temperatures. Aside from the fact that we will also have weak monsoon activities. Next. Ito yung base sa pronouncement ng Pag-asa. But NOAA recently issued their advisory. This was issued just a few days ago. The Climate Prediction Center issued their advisory that ang El Nino daw this year is coming faster than expected. Hindi June, kundi May. There's an 82% chance na ito na magsisimula na ngayong May. At magtutuloy-tuloy ito all the way to February next year. And this is what's alarming. The chances are that it will be historically strong. There's a 66% chance that the peak of the El Nino will actually be strong or very strong. Anong epekto nito? There will be droughts and heat waves in some regions. Others naman, magiging sobra ang pag-ulan at babahain sila. But what's also of concern is that the rising global temperature na nararamdaman na natin because of climate change will go even higher. Okay. Now, El Nino affects all sectors of society. But one of the most affected is actually our water resources, as shown in this next slide. Ang mangyayari, with higher temperature and lower rainfall, the aquifer recharge will be reduced. The heat will increase the evapotranspiration. We will have lake and reservoir levels na mas mababa than average. And there will be a reduced surface flows, or in fact, baka mag-dry up pa yung surface waters gaya ng nangyari noon sa Zamboanga City, noong 2015. And since mainit, there will be an increased demand for agriculture, hydration of people and animals, and also industrial cooling. So ang supply bumababa, ang demand naman ay aakyat. Now, next, that is one of the reasons why we know that business as usual is no longer an option. Ito na yung sitwasyon natin ngayon. And therefore, there is an urgent need for us to build climate resiliency. This webinar will hopefully give us ideas on what to do. Sinimula na nga ni CP sa presentation niya earlier. And if we go to the next slide, we hope that you, at the end of this webinar, you would have learned from local and international experiences of how to deal with the El Nino, and also understand ano ba yung mga doable measures na pwede na nating simulan at ma-implement both in the short term and of course medium and long term. And I think we will also realize that we all need to work together to make this happen. Hindi lang national government or local governments and the water districts, but actually all of us. Yung simpleng impoundment lang na tubig ulan. Bawat isa sa atin can easily do that in our homes, so that our demand for water from our water service providers will also be substantially reduced. Kasi we don't really need naman drinking water quality para sa most of our needs, maligo, maglaba, magdilig ng halaman at iba pa. And I look forward to hearing also the experiences that will be shared with us by our other speakers. And hope that you will find them most useful as well. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Bebet, for helping us appreciate the scale and urgency of climate-related risks confronting the country and the water sector. Maraming salamat po sa inyo, ma'am. Now that we have a clear understanding of the climate outlook, we move to a more focused discussion on how these changes directly affect water and sanitation services. The speaker to discuss this important topic is a senior research fellow at Stockholm Environment Institute Asia with over 15 years of expertise in hydrology, water resources planning, sustainable irrigation, hydropower development, and climate change adaptation. He previously served with the Mekong River Commission as a senior water and modeling specialist and later as technical advisor on water and climate change, contributing to basin-wide strategies for sustainable development. His technical work has focused on assessing the impacts of water resources development and climate change in the Mekong Basin using advanced modeling, GIS, and scenario-based planning. Dr. Piman holds a PhD in water resources engineering and management for the Asian Institute of Technology, Thailand. Let us welcome Dr. Tanapon Piman of SEI Asia. Hi, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm very exciting to share my knowledge on the impact of climate change on water resource management and water sanitation system. I also very exciting to learn about how Philippines manage, water resource and also dealing with the impact of climate change, particularly extreme and El Nino that previous Madam talking about. So now I try to give you a global perspective and try to zoom in the key message in the Asian region, that I think very much alive and also kind of connect to the participant in this meeting. So yeah, next slide, please. So let me quickly introduce about the SEI Stockholm Environment Institute. So we are non-profit international research institute focus area on climate change, environment, sustainable development. So we are more like a applied research institute, We serve our research evidence for the policy and practice. So we normally work together with academic excellence of university around the region, where the office is there. And of course, water is just one sector, to tackle, this issue. We need to work across different sector, policy and tool. So we have multidiscipline team, in Asia Center, in Bangkok, and also around the world. SCI, we have the scientists around 350 to 400 people across the center. Next slide, please. So look at this map. I'm based in Bangkok, where is a SEI Asia Center here. I respond for water resource management project in Asia region, but however, our focus is more Southeast Asia and South Asia. Our headquarters is in Stockholm, Sweden. So we have office in 5 continents, in Africa, in Latin America, in US, in Oxford, in York, and in Tallinn. So that's why this is an advantage of SEI that we can mobilize and compare the case study across the continents and also sharing the resource. Water resource with SEI is the most backbone for the institutional. Not only me here in Asia office, we also have very strong water team in US, Latin America, and headquarters. Next, please. So let me bring you to global attention, maybe global views, from the previous speaker, you already see very concrete, plan, actions, and also situation in Philippines. I try to step out that focus to bring you the global, views from our side. The recently climate risk index, look at the impact of the extreme event. You can see how different country impact on the extreme event that also consequently caused from the climate change. So the very dark red is one of like top 10 country that have very significant effect, from the climate change index, climate risk index from last 30 years. The report showed that more than, 800,000 deaths worldwide, more than 4.5 trillion economic loss, and more than 9,700 plus extreme weather event record over last 30 years. Next, please. So when look at top 10 country most affected in 30 years, from the figure on the left hand side, Philippines and Myanmar is kind of top two country that have significant impact from the climate change and extreme compared to other country in the regions. So in 2024, between September to November, 6 typhoons struck within 30 days in the country. 16 million people affected, 11 million people displaced, hundreds of deaths, and more than 100 million damaged. Particularly tropical cyclone Tami in October 2024 kills people more than 190 people, affect over 9.6 million people. That is related to floods situations. However, I mean, the climate change is not look at flood, but also look at heat and drought. So in April to May, heat wave record temperature up to 53 Celsius worsen climate impact, in the country and from the past. There is a new record for Philippines. Next, please. So why climate change matter for water or watershed and water sanitations? We know that now 80% of climate change impact are transmitted through the water and ENSO phenomena. Climate change threaten SDG 6 on water and sanitations. Flood and droughts, heat wave, and sea level rise are the main factor disrupt water sanitation system over the regions. And of course, the poor, vulnerable community are the most impact, in different way, direct impact, indirect impact. I try to summarize, the diagram, the connecting between the climate change and so water resource, water sanitation, and socio-economic impact through one diagram, as you see. When we talk the climate change at the moment, I think we are thinking about 4 factors: rising temperature, changing rain pattern, sea level rise, more extreme events over the world, over the regions. And from the previous Madame's presentation, she already go in deep about ENSO phenomena. I think we consider that like a 2 phase or 3 phase. One is El Nino regarding to the warm phase, and another one is La Nina regarding to the cool phase, and also the neutral ones. But it's very hard now to find the neutral phase, over last 10, 20 years from my study. And the climate change will impact on water resource quantity, quality, and infrastructure. I think a lot of examples already are from 3 speakers before me, So that is a real impact, and it's true. And when we look at the water supply service and sanitation service, it's also linkages, water shortage, service delivery, quality of service, and also the hygiene, and also the disease contamination. So this is very important, when we see this picture. But in the management and in operation, this thing not really well connect, to deal with the system approach. So most of the country in the ASEAN and Southeast Asia still manage water resource in silo. Next, please. So example for climate change impact on water supply and sanitation system, I give 2 examples in Philippines and Thailand, where I'm here, Actually, I see a lot of Philippines here, many teachers from Philippines on English in Thailand. So we are very close in culture. So Philippines faced super typhoon Haiyan in 2013, that damaged a lot of water pipeline, sanitation facility, wastewater system. And in 2015 and 16, strong El Nino droughts reduced the water level in many reservoirs that supply to Manila, caused urban water shortage and intermittent supplies. And recently in 2024, monthly typhoon and heat wave hit Philippines. Look, Thailand side. In 2011, we also have a very great flood in Thailand. Most of the country are under the water. It's a huge flood. It's damaged many infrastructure, sewage network, sanitation system, and also not only in the upstream area, but also in Bangkok, that is also our capital. And in 2015 and 16, El Nino drought also affect Thailand and Mekong region. As you can see now, the comparison between Thailand and Philippines, you can see the period is quite close and similar. So we also facing a shortage of reservoir, shortage of water supply, and also many environmental problems due to poor water quality as a water level is low. And in 2020, we also have severe droughts that reduce river flow and groundwater recharge, affect many areas on water supply and sanitation, and also irrigation area. Nowadays, Bangkok have a lot of plan to thinking also how to manage salinity intrusion to the how to manage salinity intrusion for Bangkok city, because now last 3 or 4 years were very low level of sea level rise, or high level of sea level rise impact the water supply of Bangkok. So that is very critical. And Bangkok, I think, is quite big city. More than 15 million people stay here. Next, please. If you look at last strong El Nino in the region, it's in 2020, 15, 16. And if you look at now, we are at 2026. See? So this is kind of period, as you can see, we will see this cycle more often, every 10 years that you're gonna see very great or strong El Nino, and between that you may have like kind of medium impact or small impact on this kind of phenomena. But again, this can be a one-off signal every 10 years that you have to rethinking, you have to monitoring intensively on this kind of phenomena. Next, please. So this picture is just give you a keep reminding to you how the impact look like. The super typhoon Haiyan in 2013 is it's very hard to explain how damage it is. You can see the picture, you lost everything, And the next one, the severe drought in Thailand. You can see, people are competing for water supply for different sector. If you don't have very good plan or coordination plan, it will be it will be a conflict across the water user. Next, please. Next, before this, come. Go back, please. Yeah. No, next one. Yeah. I think this PowerPoint or this slide also can confirm, from scientists research or information that previous Madam also mentioned. When we look forward, and so this year in 2026, a high likelihood that a fully developed of ENSO event will be emerged between June and July. If you look at the left-hand side graph, the red bar is show high likelihood from the second half of the year. And on the right map, you can see how the warm oceans move across the continents and oceans. So this is very clear in terms of science that it's coming, So how you prepare for that? Next. SCI now initiates one SCI kind of concept, to tackle water and circularity issue. We are trying to call for the action on critical watershed and water sanitation coordination for resilience water future. I have seen the presentation from the first speaker talk about the water management plans in Philippines. Very nice, very update, you know. But however, when you try to look at watershed and salinity system in action, in operation, is disconnected. You know, water allocation and environmental decision affect water sanitation reliability. You know, so each sector are working in silo. They are not really well coordinated.นะครับ. So the major capacity gap we identify from our research is limit ability to plan across sector. So water is strong, but how you coordinate with other water related sector? And link to the second one, weak capacity to negotiation, equitable outcome, you know, because of different power dynamic. Some sector are very strong power, like in Mekong, you know, hydropower can do many things. While water is a kind of third or fourth priority that country will talk about on the impact and how to manage in example. And of course, insufficient finance for coordination action, poor indication of monitoring tools. That is the key. Next. So yeah, I have two last slide to give a good example of good practice in integrating building resilient watershed and water sanitation. One is Singapore, you know. Singapore, they know that they have very limited resource. They are small islands. So that's why they try to diversify about water source, not only depend on the surface water, but they try many ways, you know, to have more sort of water. And also look into the reuse of water, recycling, circularity,นะครับ. And very important is active planning,นะครับ, and strong government for long-term planning. In many countries in the region, you know, because of politics is very uncertain. They change every 2-3 years. So that's why policy is not continue and don't have very long-term impact, but more focused on short-term impact or ad hoc impact. The second country that I think most of you well known is about Netherlands. They live under the sea. So they use loom for the river to build the climate resilient for water sanitation system. So through the picture, you can see, you know, how they work on this topic. My last slide, please. Sorry if my sound is not so clear. I have a bad sore throat this morning. So I start with 10 countries most affected by the extreme event. I would like to stop my slide also call for 10 action for the climate resilient watershed and water sanitation system that our team are thinking about. First, integrate climate risk and ENSO forecasting. Now we have to look at all the length of forecasting, not only short term, but medium term and long term as far as possible, because now the technology and information is enabling this kind of action. Second, you need to turn from the passive planning to proactive planning for preparedness. You know, you cannot wait the impact come. You can start now if you have very strong government view or political view or strong plan. Diversify of sort of water, you know, not only surface groundwater, but also the wastewater, how to reuse them for the most effectiveness, you know, because water resource now is limited, you know. In the future, we cannot say that water resource is plenty now. We need to protect watershed, forest, and wetland, you know, for nature-based solution, and also biodiversity. Upgrade the infrastructure for resilience, you know, reduce wastewater use, strengthen governance, improve water quality information and decision making. And also, it's very important, you cannot work everywhere, you know, we need to plan. So identify the hotspot is very key on number 9. And the last one is very important, is increasing finance and cross-sector coordination for resilience. So if you look at the top, the collective impact, you know, for us to get a for safe, sustainable, and climate resilient water resource. So I stop my presentation here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Piman. Thank you for sharing with us SEI's 10 actions for climate resilient watershed and water sanitation system, and for clearly showing how climate change affects not only water availability, but also infrastructure, reliability, public health, sanitation, and long-term sustainability of utilities. Thank you very much, sir. I hope you'll feel better. And for those who are in FB, shout out po sa inyo. Thank you so much for watching us via Facebook Live. And for our participant in Zoom, you are welcome to give us your questions. Please just type it in the chat box so that we can collect it and then ask it later to our speakers during the open forum. Thank you so much. As we continue our learning journey today, it is also important to look beyond our borders and learn from successful experiences in other countries. To share international best practices and innovative approaches on climate resilience, let us welcome a professor of environmental engineering and management at the Asian Institute of Technology and co-director of the Global Water and Sanitation Center. With a doctorate in water and wastewater engineering from AIT, he has built a distinguished career advancing sustainable solutions in sanitation and wastewater management. His expertise spans decentralized treatment systems, fecal sludge management, innovative sanitation technologies, and the reuse, and recycling of waste and wastewater. Dr. Kutatep has been widely recognized for pioneering the use of constructed wetlands and promoting resilient, inclusive approaches to water and sanitation. His work continues to shape policies, practices, and capacity building across Asia and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tamarat Kutatep of AIT GWSC. Good morning, sir.
Morning. Salamat po. Maraming salamat. Okay. Good. Thank you very much for your kind invitation. Let us join on behalf of the Asian Institute of Technology and the Global Water Sanitation Center. So let me share the screen, or you can share. Okay, great. Okay, thanks a lot. I'd like to share a certain experience that we have. Not only myself, but also our team at the Asian Institute of Technology that delegate in particular to that the sanitation or water and sanitation hygiene regarding to the climate resilience. I think that that's quite important that the many speakers, many addresses try to look into that, how we can manage the climate, how we can provide a certain resilient infrastructure, which is try to share with you that what are the possible international best practices. So next slide, please. Yeah, well, there could be many agenda that we can talk, but beyond that, I think we have tried to highlight what are the water demand management, nature-based solution, the sanitation resilience, utility resilience, and then I think one of the most important thing apart from the infrastructure is that we can think about the behavioral change and communication, and then try to share with you a certain experience from the reinvented toilet technology, which we have done together with many other partners in the region, and then try to share with you that how the GWSC and the AIT can support, and then with the key message. Next slide, please. Then to set this scenes, I think Dr. Thanapon and then the earlier Madam have been talking about this kind of the effects or the detrimental effects or the stress from the El Nino or the climate risk. But particular to the water system, apart from the water resource management, apart from the scarcity of the water, then we need to think further about that, how we can impact not only to the economics, but also to the health. I'm sure that in the Philippines, in the Southeast Asian or African or South Asian country, it is not only affects to the economics, but also to the health of the people that are having the outbreaks or pandemics, which is becoming more serious. And then I think that could be due to not only the wastewater, but also even at the household sanitation system. So next slide, please. Yeah, I think there are three fronts of the WASH climate resilience that I think starting from the system resilience. When Dr. Kanapon talked about that, the effect globally that the top 10, top 20 of the countries have been affected. It's not only the strain of that the climate risk, but also the existing system in your particular country, that whether your system has a resilience or not, either from the infrastructure in particular to that the sanitations. I'm sure that most of the country in the developing country, we are not having everywhere with the sewer system, but we mostly relies on that decentralized or on-site sanitation system. Then the things that we also need to link about that the supply measures. If we have possible to use a nature-based solution, perhaps it could be better than just using that the sewer system. And then we also need to think about that the demand side, that depending on the population, the use, and then we also need to have I think about that the behavioral change, for example, on that the toilet system. If we can replace the toilets that flush about that 8 to 10 liter per flush to be only about that 2 or even 1 liter per flush, then we can save a lot of the demand. So this could be the things that we need to exchange and then try to move forward that in the future how our country can provide more the system resilience. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, from the demand side, I think the other expert would be the one that explain much better than I am. I'm mostly focused on the wastewater, but anyway, I think there could be a linkage that not just only thinking about that the treatment of the water, provide enough water to the people, but the case in Singapore, I think most of you know pretty well, the new water or the thing that we can reclaim or reuse of the water properly. Everything, every drop should count and then return back. So I think should be the things that we have to properly plan in the more integrated management system, that not just think about that water supply, flooding, drought, but also if we can reclaim or reuse of those treated water, wastewater, either from the domestic wastewater or even the industrial wastewater. If we can treat properly, then we can use differently. Definitely, if we try to reuse the very toxic industrial wastewater, even if it is treated, potentially it could be the risk. So that we need to think about that, where to supply those kind of a treated effluent. So next slide, please. Then of course, the other things that about the smart water grid and the precision irrigation, that also quite an important thing that we need to think about and invest more in terms of that, how we can properly determine the non-revenue water that try to reduce as much as possible. For example, in Bangkok, we can be about that up to about 30-40%, even if we have said that we have a very good water supply and distribution system, but the leakage is still there. So I think one of the investment should be that not just try to get more and more water, but if we can try to reduce the leakage of the water, that could be helpful. And then in our agricultural sector, if we have better technologies or the system like the precision irrigation, that we can reduce most of that the evaporation system. The case in those in the Middle East country, then there could be the things that we also need to make use of that. Even if our country is sitting in that tropical region, we have more precipitation rate, but during the drought seasons, I think we should not just say that, well, we can do the same practice in the past 20 years ago, but we need to apply even the technology from the Middle East to our country, that we can have in this kind of a precision irrigation. Next slide, please. Then The other things that I think are quite important to set or to establish this kind of a resilience in our system, that if we have a management of the stormwater runoff properly, but not just to divert directly to the river, to the lake, to the oceans, but if we can having a certain kind of a nature-based solution like wetlands, constructed wetlands, mangrove, then we can distribute those kind of the non-poisonous pollution as well. And then at the same time, we can retain a certain ecosystem within the urban areas. Then I think this could be the things that the example from the Tokyo and Osaka retrofit system, they can reduce this kind of 40% of stormwater runoff already. So that in Manila, in Bangkok, or in many other mega cities, if we can, instead of having bigger and bigger pipes, but instead we have the green area like a wetland system that will be there. Another thing is that we recently apply with the support of the Lee foundations that try to introduce into the small communities in Bangkok, not in Bangkok, in Pathum Thani, not very far from AIT. Then we try to integrate them together with the small
Darlie, 21 ay winners ra. Ay na sa actually sa take. 6 times 6, 9 ka buo. 9 ka buo winners, top 1.
Party line.
Okay, so in Pathum Thani attribute models, we can show that I'll say again that the 40% reduce of the freshwater use if we can properly treat the gray water and reuse and then use that in the area. So next slide, please. Then the other things on the sanitation resilience, definitely the sanitation should not be just only for the collection, for the treatment of your toilet wastewater, but if we can provide a certain technological solution that can be the climate resilience as well, that could be more important, especially during the disaster, either from the flood, from the drought, or even the natural disaster. Then this could be the things that we have to invest more, especially on the technology if we don't have the servers. And then you may know about that when we there in Japan, they have the big earthquake. Then the only functioning system remains there during the earthquake is that the decentralized or the on-site system like the Tukaso remain functioning, but the big server system is not functioning at all. So there could be something that we have to think about carefully, that whether we should like to invest on the big infrastructure for the server and treatment plant, but if it is the on-site like the Tukaso system, and then the treatment, we also need to think about that the climate proof, not just only to adapt to that the serious climate risk, but we can think about that not to produce the greenhouse gas emission as well. So that there could be another thing that we can maintain the system functioning, but at the same time we can reduce the carbon emission out of the system. That could be the sanitation resilience in the whole framework. Yeah, next slide, please. Then the other things on that, utility resilience, I think that's would be many things that Dr. Thanapon also mentioning about the adaptive water management and regional coordination, which is again not just only individual utilities can work, but in terms of that the basin we have to work and share the ideas, share the resources, and then we can ensure that all the catchment can be made in the real time, and then the climate scenario planning, that's also quite the things that we need to plan properly, that the different scenario, the very high precipitation or very high drought in a certain months, how do we manage? How can we manage that? So that this kind of scenario can help us to imagine that what would be the possible infrastructure, how we can mitigate this kind of the effects. And then this would be the things that properly using that the advanced techniques, technologies like GIS and many other can help utility provide more resilience into the system. Next slide, please. Then, as I earlier mentioned to you, that not just only the technical or infrastructure required, but also we need to have that the thing on the behavioral change and that we try to ensure that what are the quantified target that we would like to get, not just only to meet the standards. For example, if in the wastewater treatment system, if just to treat according to the standard, it may not be enough. Somehow we need to think about that. Similarly, at the same the treatment standard, how can we reduce the carbon emission, for example? So this would be the things that we need to have this kind of the measures that can help in providing the disincentive, public feedback, or appropriate messaging, or start before the crisis. That's quite important to learn from that different the scenario, and then we can train and change the people behaviors as well too, so that we can set resilience into the water and sanitation system. Next slide, please. Then come to the technologies. I think it is a possible application of these technologies that AAT, with the support of the gas foundation, have been reinvented the technologies, so-called reinvented toilets technologies. We have provided at least 4 technology like the hydrocyclone tube toilets, solar septic tank, for example. Then you can find many more information, but particularly on the solar septic tank, for example, it could be very simple that you don't need to use the expensive electricity, but you can use the solar power to heat up the septic tank, and then you can comply with the standards, and then you can meet the performance requirements. So there could be many others. That's only from AAT, but we can have many more others. But next slide, please. Which we think that we can translate that into practice, and then many more on that. So that we just like to have a kind of a draft proposal to you that from the do it now, plan this year, and build the long term. There could be many things that we can check from the different scenario, and how we can integrate the water demand management, or using that the technologies, and then the natural solution. And then particularly to that the sanitation system, I'd like to have addressed that the fecal sludge management is still there. In Manila, yes, you have a very big treatment plant, but in other cities along in your country, in the big island, small island, you still have to manage the fecal sludge. Otherwise, it's just discharged like directly to the sea, to the ocean, and then if it just make a not very good management, then it could have a many contaminants. So that we need to start it now, and then plan forward that how we can integrate into the system, and then think about that system resilience as well. So that would be the lesson learned that in the past in our many projects in India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Indonesia as well, that we can make use of that kind of lesson learned to apply into the Philippines. Next slide, please. Then we can support you for this journey, that rapid assessment, the technology testing, using that the nature-based solution, and then integrate with that the policy strategy advisory, with that the capacity building development, and then definitely South-South exchange of the knowledge would be very important things, that the lesson learned from the Bangkok, for example, which is there could be good and bad lessons that we need to avoid as well. That this kind of thing that I think we can help you to provide how we can set the better climate resilient infrastructure for the water and the sanitation system. Then next slide, please. That's why we try to share with you that the AAT is not working alone. We have many partners together with that the strategic partners, academic partners, funding partners, execution partners in the past couple of years that we have been working throughout this the support of the Gates Foundation, that at least the 13 million US dollar we can push forward into that how we can expedite the use of that citywide inclusive sanitation in India, in Bangladesh, in Nepal, as well as in Indonesia. So that this kind of experience we can be the kind of platform for you to support on that setting of that the climate resilient infrastructures. Next slide, please. Then with that, I try to summarize with that the building stability before the crisis is quite important. That from the first thing on the demand side, efficiency and behavior is quite important. Second to that, why not we apply the nature-based solution? I think not the same as in the Europeans or the developed country. Why not we define what are the possible nature-based solutions appropriate to our region in the Philippines, in Indonesia, in Thailand as well, so that we can have a system resilience from the because of management, for example, together with that the governance system that we should have had those governance, and then we can set this example, and with that the our centers to the USA can provide this kind of additional or advanced research, the standardization, staff training, and technological testing for you, so that we can help people to change the behaviors and then have a better the institutional reform or better system. So with that, the next slide, please. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kutatep. Thank you for sharing valuable global experiences and practical strategies that Philippine water service providers may adapt to local conditions. Maraming salamat po. We are now around 500 we now have around 500 participants from Zoom and FB Live. So we hope that those information that Dr. Kutatep shared with you will be valuable. It is encouraging to see that while climate challenges are complex, there are tested approaches and technologies that can help strengthen resilience when combined with good governance and community participation. At this point, we now transition from global experiences to practical applications within the Philippine context. This session will highlight local case examples and actionable strategies that water utilities and LGUs may consider in strengthening climate resilience. Our speaker for this segment is a distinguished expert in water resources and sanitation engineering with over 35 years of experience in infrastructure development, policy, and institutional strengthening. He is the founding president and COO of Global Water Solutions Incorporated, leading initiatives in water security, sustainable sanitation, and demand management. Engineer Texon was a principal author and sanitation lead specialist of the Philippine Water Supply and Sanitation Master Plan, a landmark framework for national development. His career spans advisory roles with USAID, the World Bank, and ADB, and international work across Asia. In 2024, Mapua University honored him as Most Outstanding Alumnus in Water Resources Engineering. Our speaker, Engineer J. Texon of GWSI. Hi, sir.
Good morning, Claire.
Morning, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for that very long introduction. But I think the important message today is really El Nino is or have already arrived in the Philippines in Asia, and we should have started preparing years ago. But I guess this time is as good as any to start preparing for the impending El Nino for this year. So I'm tasked to discuss to you some case examples from the Philippines and some proposed and practical actions, of which were already discussed by previous speakers, to help us prepare for the impending El Nino, which they project to continue on until early 2027. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to reiterate some of the messages that came out from Ms. Bibet's presentation. El Nino is actually a recurring natural climate cycle that can trigger severe drought. No, climate change is the force that can amplify its impacts, meaning El Nino is not directly a climate change impact. El Nino creates the drought risk, but climate change can make the drought more severe. El Nino is the immediate threat. Climate resilience is the long-term strategy. So for us who are in the planning sector as well as with water service providers, climate change is no longer a future planning issue. It is now affecting source reliability, infrastructure resilience and service continuity across Philippine water utilities. So we see this with our big utilities like Manila, then Manila Water in Metro Manila, Metro Cebu Water District, where depletion is happening and saline intrusion in some parts of Cebu. Also in Bulacan and Cavite, there's issues on land subsidence, groundwater stress. Also in Iloilo, Bacolod, and Palawan, that part of the country, we also see signs of coastal aquifer risk. So these are just some examples where impacts of El Nino as well as the broader climate change impacts are seen, observed in this area. So some of the lessons that we'll be tackling in the next few slides would cover these topics: managing groundwater stress and extraction limits, implementing water demand management, as also mentioned by other speakers, exploring wastewater reuse, another source of water supply for us, responding to saline intrusion, and adapting to declining water quality and quantity. Next, please. I just like to highlight that picture. Can you go back? That's one of my favorite pictures. This shows the Pasonanca River in Zamboanga City before and after or before and during the El Nino in 2019. Okay, so we've never expected that the Pasonanca River will actually dry up, but when the El Nino happened in 2019, even in 2016, this has actually happened in Zamboanga City. Next. Okay, so in many parts of the country, we've already instituted the moratorium in groundwater extraction, which are actually suffering from aquifer stress. Meaning during the times of El Nino, the business as usual is no longer sustainable. So we cannot go on continue operations without really changing the rules of the game, no? Groundwater is the first buffer. It's actually the first casualty during an El Nino. El Nino and the lessons behind El Nino is that utilities can often overdraw groundwater to compensate for reduced surface water, creating long-term damage. So while most of the service providers utilize surface water source, when El Nino comes in, then the groundwater becomes the next best thing, no, for new sources of water, and this actually exacerbate the conditions of aquifer stress. The case of Metro Cebu, we see the utility increasing groundwater pumping during dry periods. No, they've even implemented desalination as a new source of water for Cebuanos. This actually leads to aquifer decline and heavy dependence on groundwater for many years. There's now ongoing growing evidence of another depletion and saltwater intrusion in many cases because of over-extraction and increasing pressure to limit new extraction permits in the city, and shift toward bulk surface water development, meaning using dams and river reservoirs. We also see this in Bulacan and Cavite and some parts around Metro Manila, where drought increases dependence on wells, intensive groundwater pumping linked to accelerating land subsidence risk. Some communities now are vulnerable to flooding due to sinking land, one of which is Hagonoy, which is a striking example of a land subsidence. And then around the provinces outside Metro Manila, provincial water districts are now losing their spring-fed systems, no? And now resorting to emergency boreholes. So what are the lessons behind this? We see that groundwater depletion is often invisible, meaning we don't literally see them go out at once, no, until service reliability declines, until there's not noticeable decline in available supply. In many cases, moratorium or moratoria can trigger crisis if utilities have no alternative sources. Just like in Manila, and I think Bataan also has instituted moratorium for groundwater extraction. Utilities need aquifer monitoring, not production monitoring. So I know for a fact that many utilities actually resort to production monitoring, but have not really gone into aquifer monitoring. But I think for the simple reason that it's more expensive. So I think we should start rethinking how we monitor available supply, not just for production, but also for monitoring aquifer. Regulatory coordination with National Water Resources Board is essential and in fact was required in the latest memorandum that was circulated by NWRB a few weeks ago. Now, several of the speakers mentioned also one of the immediate and most doable intervention is the instituting a water demand management program. This is actually creating new water without going into new sources and the fastest El Nino response tool. During El Nino, the cheapest new source is water not lost or wasted. So if you're faced with several options on how you will raise new water supply or creating new source for water, this is the way you can immediately implement new water supply source, no, by instituting a new water demand management program. This can come in many forms. Like example for Manila, they've instituted a stringent NRW reduction program and also large-scale leak detection. This is the main intervention that they've done by way of water demand management. Manila Water, on the other hand, resorted to pressure management and utility conservation campaigns during drought alerts. So some of the lessons that we've learned from these utilities is that saving water can be faster and more efficient than developing new sources, cost efficient than developing new sources. It's quite cheaper, no, and faster. NRW reduction strengthens drought resilience. Yes, so if you have additional source of water, of course, that counters your drought episodes. No? Pressure management also reduces pipe bursts during extremes. Customer trust improves when utilities model conservation. So the trust building is important because whatever the utility says, it's imperative that customer try to listen and also follow instructions from the utility. Now, what are the practical measures that we can do as the utilities? Leak detection, I think that's an ongoing concern for most of our utilities, and rapid repair. Pressure zoning, smart metering is another one, and seasonal conservation campaigns. I don't know if this is being done by many of our utilities, and the tiered tariffs that encourage efficiency. That's another strong water demand measure action that can be done as well. But depends on our economic regulatory policies. Next, please. Wastewater treatment reuse. This is actually building drought-proof water supply, turning wastewater into climate resilience asset. Every liter reused is a liter not extracted from a stress source. El Nino exposes dependence of freshwater-only systems. The case of in Metro Manila sewerage expansion by MWSS. This is a growing investment in sewage treatment plants, which they've done in many years in the past. Compliance pressure under the Philippine Clean Water Act, and increasing recognition that treated effluent can support non-potable reuse. So they have demonstrable cases, examples from Metro where they actually reuse the treated effluent from their treatment facilities. Around Metro Manila, there are industrial estates in Laguna, Cavite, and Clark, which reuse treated wastewater for cooling, cleaning, and irrigation. So by way of reuse of treated effluent, we can actually save up on potable water supply. So what are the lessons learned? Wastewater can offset freshwater demand. As mentioned by Sec Bebet, we don't need to use drinking water to flush down our toilets, no, to clean our cars, no, or water the plants. Reuse reduces pressure on rivers and aquifers. Public perception must be actively managed. Okay, reuse regulation and standards need to be strengthened, and this goes to our regulatory agencies like NWRB, LUA, and MWSS. What are the possible practical approaches for utilities? No, irrigation of parks and public areas, public spaces are recipient of treated effluent. We can make use of that for landscape irrigation. Toilet flushing in large buildings. We can also use this is the norm actually in more advanced countries. You know, we've seen this in Australia, perhaps. They have a dual billing system for clean water and gray water. So the gray water is actually used for secondary uses of domestic uses. And then industrial partnership where water and waste, more water supply is being used and greater, more wastewater is generated. You know, so you strike a partnership with industries, and this helps augment the supply that's needed, and also cultivate a culture of reuse among these industries. Aquifer recharge, or this is a future option now. I believe, and the NWRB is already looking into programs that will support aquifer recharge. So, bottom line, wastewater and reuse is another key element for starting our preparation for El Nino. Now, another impact that is actually a result of El Nino, but strictly considered a climate change impact, is saline intrusion and sea level rise. Now, coastal utilities are on the front line. El Nino can accelerate saline intrusion, even if sea level rise is the long-term driver. Philippine, such as the case in central Cebu, where coastal wells showing rising salinity, groundwater resort to over abstraction, worsen seawater intrusion, and utilities are forced to abandon or blend affected wells. Other vulnerable areas include Iloilo, Bacolod, Cavite, Palawan Islands, and Bulacan. And this is actually quite normal and usual for archipelagic country. You know, we have more coastal towns, affected by saline intrusion. Now, what are the warning signs utilities should monitor? The rising chloride levels, changes in taste complaints, increase in corrosion in distribution system, and declining well productivity. So these are observable changes that the utilities can actually try to monitor. What are the lessons learned? Sea level rise plus groundwater pumping leads to compounded risk. No, quality can fall before quantity fails. So quality first suffers, and then quantity. Coastal aquifers need stricter abstraction controls. Now, what are the practical actions? Install salinity monitoring network for those who are suffering already with saline intrusion. Reduce pumping near shoreline if you're near shoreline. Shift extraction inland, and explore manage aquifer recharge. Okay, so these are some direct actions that address saline intrusion and sea level rise. The next, please. I think I'm down to my few slides. That the next issue is declining surface and groundwater quality and quantity. Now, admittedly, climate change is reducing both volume and usability. A case of Angat Dam in Metro Manila, El Nino episodes reduce reservoir storage. Supply interruptions highlighted dependence on a single major source. So that's the consequence actually of having just a single major source. Local water districts nationwide and common utility impacts can go for higher treatment chemical will result into higher treatment chemical costs, no? More frequent shutdowns, customer complaints on taste and odor, regulatory compliance risks, springs drying earlier, faster, rivers with higher turbidity after intense rainfall, more sediment and contamination events, algal bloom. So these are the main impacts of climate change, which exacerbates the effects of El Nino or the low availability of water supply. Now, what are the lessons learned? Source quality management is now operational resilience, meaning we need to go into our source monitoring, and that should be part of our operational systems. Watershed degradation amplifies climate impacts, and utilities need raw water early warning systems. What are the practical actions we can do? Real-time turbidity, water quality monitoring. I guess many of the utilities are doing this. Watershed partnership with LGUs, protect recharge zones with LGUs. So some of the programs may require you to work with the local governments to help protect your watersheds and effect, and also recharge zones, and then develop a source water protection plans because source is vital, and then the protection plan needs to be in place. Conduct annual groundwater balance assessment, monitor static dynamic well levels. These are terminologies that are quite common among our utilities. Develop phase source diversification plans. We'll talk about more of the new sources and diversification of sources. Okay, so down to our last two slides, what utilities should do before El Nino peaks. The priority is know your risk. What we can do is to do a climate vulnerability assessment. For protecting our sources, we can go into groundwater monitoring, watershed management. I guess these are common activities that are done by utilities. In terms of reducing losses, NRW and pressure management, that's an ongoing concern for many of utilities. Diversify supply, bulk water, if we can look into bulk water supply, reuse, and conjunctive uses. Now, preparing for El Nino shocks, drought and typhoon standard operating procedures. If we had not done this, I think we should have thought about it years ago and start doing this. No, what are the triggers for operating our systems during the time of El Nino? Now, data is very important. We need to improve our data management system. We can resort to digital monitoring and dashboards. So these are just examples of what we can do within the 30 days, and then within 90 days and within 6 months. The timing is critical, but also the types of activities or actions that we would like to recommend are also important and critical. Last slide. So in closing, resilience is a management decision. The next climate emergency should not become the next water crisis. What are the final lessons from Philippine utilities? Please take note of this. This might come out in the test later. Waiting for formal crisis declaration, either for Pampagasa or NWA is too late. Don't wait for a formal crisis declaration. Groundwater cannot be treated as unlimited. No, Ms. Bebet has always been saying this. No, groundwater altogether cannot be treated as unlimited. Energy reduction is climate adaptation. Okay, reducing water losses is critical. And then we need to start thinking about wastewater reuse. We should have done this long time ago. Clean water was in 2004, and we have not done much about it. So turn the concept into practice. Okay, and then source protection is utility business continuity. So we protect our source, we continue with our business of supplying potable and affordable water. So this is the closing challenge to our participants. What is one resilience action your utility can begin with the next 90 days? So think hard and think long. What are the specific actions that you as a utility, as a service provider can do in the next 90 days? El Nino is not unexpected. Its timing may vary, but its return is certain. So year, it will come, it will happen. So preparation is therefore is not optional. Okay, prepared utilities will manage shortages. Yeah, shortages may happen, but unprepared utilities will manage crisis. So don't let this happen to your utility. Thank you for your attention. Back to you, Claire.
Thank you, Sir Jay, for sharing practical examples that our participants can relate to and potentially adopt in their own systems and operations. So para po sa mga participants natin, meron na po ba kayong nakita or napusuan na gusto ninyong i-apply sa inyong mga um, services? So please, kung meron na yan, please give a thumbs up or a heart react. Thank you so much. So we hope that you're able to gather some solutions or practical applications that you can do in your water services. Maraming salamat po. Before we proceed with the interactive part of our program, we would like to ask our 300 plus participants in the Zoom to please turn on your cameras for a photo opportunity. Mabilis lang po, ayan. Smile, let us capture your participation in this momentous occasion. As we have a quite number of participants, please give us a few minutes to take a screenshot of everyone joining us today. Just keep that beautiful smile on your face. Yan. Smile, everyone. 13 panels po tayo. So, okay, next. Yan. Smile. Thank you. Yan. Thank you po for those who turned on their cameras. Next. Fourth panel. Yan, smile. Next. Okay. Nakikita ko po, ang dami nating participants from all over the Philippines. From water districts, LGUs. Yan, smile. Yan. Okay. Ninth panel. Yes. Okay, we're almost done. Smile. Ayan. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. Thank you for that wonderful smile of yours. At this point, we have heard valuable perspectives. Oh, please po sa mga, sorry, before I forget, yung sa FB po, we are not forgetting you. We also took a screenshot, I think, from our technical team. Nag-screenshot din po tayo in FB so that you're also recognized. Around 200 plus viewers in our Facebook Live. Thank you. At this point, we have heard valuable perspectives from policy and science to operations and implementation. So we now move to an important part of today's program where participants can directly engage with our experts. To facilitate our discussion, let me introduce our moderator, who is currently the Water and Climate Team Leader of the Institute for Local Development of the Center for Research and Communication Foundation. Prior to this, she served as a project manager at the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, where she led a portfolio of projects focusing on enhanced water security and building climate resilience for vulnerable and underserved communities. Let us welcome our moderator, Ms. Joanne Dulce. Hi, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for the introductions, Claire. So for this session, I'm honored to introduce to you our esteemed panel of speakers who will share with us their expert views on how we can better prepare for and manage the adverse effects of El Nino. Each of our panelists has 10 minutes to deliver his and her presentation. So let me start with our first panelist. He is Engineer Mauricio Tobon, a respected leader in environmental management and sustainable development with decades of experience across Asia and the Pacific. He has worked with major international organizations, including the United Nations, the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, and USAID, contributing to transformative initiatives in water supply, sanitation, climate resilience, and urban development. Throughout his career, he has helped design national master plans, strengthen institutions, and advance practical solutions for environmental governance and sustainable development. He currently serves as president of Global Water Solutions Incorporated. Ladies and gentlemen, let us please welcome Engineer Mauricio Tobon. Over to you, Engineer Mauricio.
Thank you. Thank you. You have my slides there? First slide. Go ahead. Thank you. Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to join a discussion with Philippine water providers on climate resiliency and El Nino readiness. As mentioned earlier, water providers should have prepared for the impending El Nino many years ago. I want to start with the practical points shown on this first slide. El Nino is not a rainfall issue for a water provider. It is an operational stress test. It exposes weak source redundancy, high NRW, inadequate storage, limited pressure control, and late demand management. My comments today are based on my role as team leader for the USA Surge Water Security Master Plan for Zamboanga City. That experience matters because the plan was built around drought resiliency, water demand management, non-revenue water reduction, climate risk, and practical decision support for LGU and water providers. The Zamboanga analysis showed patterns clearly: stronger rainfall variability, warming temperatures, drought-prone barangays, and higher operational risk. When conditions become hotter and drier, customer demands tend to rise while the availability of sources and yield can fall. If the system already has high stress, high losses, limited storage, the storage shows up faster. As you can see on the right, there's a couple of graphs where we analyzed actually what happens when the climate repeats itself and what happens in the future if it's drier conditions or wetter conditions. But also what we did is we also looked at the demand and what happens with the demand if the demand increases or decreases. So the opening question for every water provider is direct. If water availability drops, demand rises, and losses remain high, what fails first? Is it the river intake, the well field, the treatment plant, the pump station, storage, pressure zones, water quality, or public confidence? Do not wait for depleted reservoirs, low pressure complaints, or public pressure before answering that question. Start from the water balance now. For many water providers, the fastest new source is not a new dam or well. It's water already being produced, but lost through leaks, meter errors, illegal connections, and poor pressure management. Slide 2, please. The Zamboanga Water Security Master Plan was just not a list of projects. It was a decision framework. It laid climate, watershed, sources, demand, NRW, investments, alternative in one process. We use WEAP from the SEI and scenario analysis to test what happens under different water supply and demand condition. Water providers don't need to do a full master plan. They can apply to simplified operating versions immediately. First, define drought triggers. A trigger should be measurable, not vague. Use your source flow, reservoir tank levels, daily production, groundwater drawdown, pressure complaints, turbidity, chlorine residual, salinity, or bacterial risk. Use clear operating stages such as normal, watch, alert, and emergency. Second, characterize real demand. Use production records, build consumptions, large user demands, seasonal patterns, and actual service area growth. Do not rely on the theoretical design capacity if it was reliable during the drought. Capacity on paper is not drought resilient capacity. Third, run a dry scenario balance. Do not plan on an average year. Test what happens if the main source drops by 10, 20, 30%. While demand rises because of heat and NRW stays high, then identify which pressure zones, barangays, or customer groups are affected first. Fourth, rank options by reliable MLD, cost, and speed. For this year, the fast options are usually NRW recovery, pressure management, backup wells, pump rehabilitation, valve, meter testing, emergency interconnects. Major new sources may still be necessary, but they will not solve the immediate shortage that's already developed. Fifth, adopt a public response plan before the crisis. And I think this is very important. I really haven't heard yet the public part of this. That means conservation messaging, critical users, barangay coordination, LGU roles, large user coordination, and rationing stages if they become necessary. The worst time to write a rationing plan is after customers are already angry and the water provider has lost control of the narratives. The blunt lesson is this: average year planning is not enough. Water providers need to know how much reliable water can actually be produced and delivered under dry conditions. Third slide, please. This last slide is the action plan. The goal is not to perfectly predict El Nino. The goal is for water providers not to be surprised by their own system. In the Zamboanga analysis, we compared future demand and dry climate scenarios. Then we looked at how to differentiate the alternatives. Water providers can use the same logic by comparing status quo, low cost actions, and reliability actions. The practical target for the next 90 days is simple: reduce demand, pressure, and increase reliable years before shortage is visible. First, activate an El Nino readiness cell, including operations, engineering, NRD, water quality, customer finance, and LGU. Put the operating data on a weekly dashboard, yield, production, bill consumption, NRW, pressure complaints, water quality, and priority users. Second, publish a trigger table internally. Everyone should know what conditions move the water district from normal to watch, alert, and emergency. Externally, the LGU and customers should understand the basis for conservation measures before rationing is needed. Third, recover NRW now. Focus on the highest loss DMAs and pressure zone. Set a 48-hour leak response target for visible leaks. Check pressure reducing valves. Control excessive night pressures. Test large customer meters. Replace obvious failed under-registering meters. Sweep for illegal connections. It is hard to defend rationing customers while avoiding leakage continues in the system. I mean, the customers are not going to get serious about reducing if they still see that the water utility or water provider has a 40-50% NRW. That's an important point. Fourth, test backup sources and logistics. Do not assume wells, pumps, generator valves, fuel system, tanker routes, chemical inventories, and emergency interconnections are ready because they appear on an inventory list. Test them under field conditions. Also, increase water quality vigilance during droughts. Fifth, manage demand before rationing. Start with voluntary conservation, large user coordination, school and barangay messaging, restrictions on non-essential uses, and visible leak reporting program. Identify priority users early: hospitals, clinics, schools, evacuation centers. My closing message is the same as the slide. El Nino doesn't create weak systems, it exposes them. The water providers that perform the best this year will not necessarily be the ones with the biggest projects. They will be the ones who know their water balance, recover losses quickly, manage demand before rationing, protect water quality, communicate early, and coordinate with the LGU before the shortage becomes a public crisis. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your work with city, demonstrate report. Now, engineer de la Cruz, a highly accomplished engineering and resilience of international experience, climate adaptation. He previously served as senior engineering manager at Southern California Edison, one of the largest utility companies in the United States, where he led major resilience initiatives focused on earthquake hazards and climate risks, which help ensure reliable electricity service for millions of Californians. He has also contributed to U.S. federal guidelines on risk-informed decision-making and has received numerous recognitions, including the Presidential Award for Filipinos Overseas. Let us now hear from Engineer Roderick de la Cruz.
Thank you, John. Can you hear me clearly? All right, good morning. Good morning from Irvine, California. And good evening here. So you have already heard many insights of the impacts of El Nino and how we can prepare for its effects. So allow me to share 3 key perspectives on climate resilience. These perspectives are highly grounded in years of managing earthquake and climate resiliency initiatives across Southern California. I'm really blessed to be able to have this opportunity to make Southern California resilient, and your kababayan has developed the framework and execution of this initiative, which is highly modeled now across the United States. Let me bring point number 1. What is the climate or global climate realities in 2026? El Nino is one name, but many realities. El Nino is just a single global phenomenon, but its impact vary dramatically geographically. As you can see here in this slide or infographics, the result of El Nino drastically differs from Southern California. While the Philippines may experience extreme heat and drought, triggering food insecurity, crop losses, and cascading socioeconomic impacts, California often faces the opposite. Heavy rainfall, flooding, coastal erosion, and heightened wildfire risks. What I would like to point out here, when we look at drought on these infographics, we have to be concerned about wildfire as well, as this is happening already worldwide. So we need to have a developed plan in order for us to understand the vulnerability of our area to wildfire and typhoons. What I'm showing here is really in contrast, underscore a critical lesson. And what's the lesson? Climate risk is not just defined by hazard alone, but it is a combination of exposure and vulnerability. Unfortunately, when you look at climate from the context of climate resiliency and climate change, Philippines is only contributing less than 1% of global emission. But the worst impact is being experienced already in the Philippines. We are one of the impacted countries worldwide of this climate change. So in the Philippines, social vulnerability is exceptionally high. And why is it high? Because when you look at climate risk, it is a combination of exposure. We are highly exposed and we are highly vulnerable. Why are we highly vulnerable? Because of this exposed intensifying hazard, our infrastructure and resources are also highly sensitive. They are poorly designed, they're poorly managed. So any shift in climate or climate hazard will have a significant impact to our country. In addition to that, we also have a very, very limited adaptive capacity. Our system will not be able to adapt to this changing hazard. One of the strain that we will experience is that we will probably be forgetting is the energy. Because of drought, because of this climate impact, there will be a high grid stress in our energy because of low supply of hydro and because of high demand by our customers. So we need to incorporate this particular perspective in order for us to solve this issue. The result is the climate impacts in the Philippines is becoming very systematic or systemic. In contrast, California's impact, though significant, are more manageable. Why? Because we have a stronger system, we have resources, and we have a good governance structure. Next slide, please. So the question is, how did we get here? Another infographic that is really dear to my heart is my town, Hagonoy. Do you think it's just a climate impact or climate change that caused this? But is this a crisis of management, not just climate? It is easy to attribute worsening conditions solely to climate change, but in many cases, the more urgent issue is governance and planning failure. If we will have an honest discussion and transparent discussion about this issue, let me share to you what I experienced in the Philippines in 2013. I was invited as a balik scientist, and my hometown of Hagonoy that time is only experiencing flooding 10 times a year. Today, flooding is a daily reality. I advise the local government and the provincial government before of raising the roads because it will worsen the water accumulation. Yet the opposite was done. And sure enough, the impact of sea level rise and poor maintenance of infrastructure, they are severely affected by this particular flooding. On top of that, after 4 billion in flood control spent in the last 3 years alone, due to corruption, due to mismanagement, my town of Hagonoy is now facing existential threat. Climate change is often cited as the primary culprit, but in a deeper analysis, it reveals otherwise. Let me point out some. Historical land use decisions, such as converting wetlands into fish ponds, disrupted the natural hydrology long before sea level rise becomes significant. We also have a weak regulatory enforcement that allowed unchecked groundwater extraction that accelerated subsidence at rates faster than the global sea level rise. Reclamation and dredging altered coastal dynamics without proper cumulative impact assessment. These are not climate problems alone. They are systemic governance problems. Fragmented policymaking, limited institutional capacity, and inconsistent implementation. When we look at El Nino, the same pattern appears in the drought experience. El Nino triggers drought, but the severity is shaped by decades of poor watershed protection, deforestation, degraded rivers and aquifers, outdated irrigation systems, and weak enforcement of extraction and land use policies. When El Nino arrives, as mentioned by Maurice, it exposes these weaknesses. Our reservoir drops faster, crops fail sooner, and communities run out of water more quickly. Not because El Nino is stronger, but because our systems are not resilient. To reduce future drought impacts, we need a holistic approach to deal with it. We need to protect watersheds, modernize irrigation, enforce extraction rules, invest in storage and recycling, and strengthen coordination across agencies and local government units. El Nino may be the trigger, but planning and management determine the scale of suffering and the speed of recovery. Next slide, please. So the question is, do we have a path forward? We have the power to change. I had the privilege of leading the first climate adaptation and vulnerability assessment in Southern California, covering a region nearly half the size of the Philippines. Despite its complexity, we developed a framework now being modeled across the United States to assess vulnerabilities across our 80 dams, thousands of buildings, and critical infrastructure system. We use 3-time horizon. We don't do a crisis management, but we develop a time horizon to understand vulnerabilities in the next 20 years, in the next 30 years, and in the next 50 years, in order for us to develop and evaluate climate impacts that will help us to develop a short and long-term adaptation strategy. And through this, we have developed what we call a risk-informed decision-making that we generated more than 100 million capital investment to strengthen our resiliency. If we can do this here in America, we can absolutely do it in the Philippines. With the right resolve, the right leadership, and the commitment to make decisions grounded in science, systems, and long-term planning, the power to change is in our hands.
Thank you, Engineer Roderick de la Cruz. I especially like the presentation stressing the importance of good governance, strong management, and sound policy enforcement to effect system-wide change in our municipality with the specific case of Hagonoy. We would like to complete our three-member panel with Attorney Maria Paz Ipat Luna. She is a distinguished environmental lawyer and policy expert with more than 2 decades of experience in conservation, governance, environmental protection, and public health. She has held key leadership roles in government and civil society, including serving as Undersecretary of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Throughout her career, she has contributed to landmark environmental policies and worked with international organizations such as the World Health Organization, UNDP, and GIZ. Her work continues to advance environmental protection, inclusive development, and climate resilience in the Philippines. Let us please welcome Attorney Ipat Luna.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, GWSI and NWRB for organizing this. I guess I can concentrate on policy. Sorry, I think there's a light that's interfering with my. There. I'm against the light. Okay. So I'd first like to mention that there's a Rainwater Collector and Springs Development Act of 1989. That's as early as almost 3 decades ago. And it mandates the DPWH to construct water wells and rainwater collections in all the barangays across the Philippines. There's somebody here from the DPWH. They might be able to enlighten us because within a few months from the passage of that law, they should have had a a plan as to how to comply with this mandate. Once constructed, the operation and maintenance of these public works should be passed on to the barangay water works and sanitation associations. There are numerous DILG circulars for enforcing 6716 and adapting to modern climate change demands. For public buildings, all government public infrastructure are mandated to construct rainwater collection systems. The DILG also directs local government units to pass ordinances that require rainwater harvesting for private developments. Even the Philippine Green Building Code sets explicit thresholds for larger private developments regarding water efficiency. Buildings within these thresholds must integrate a rainwater harvesting system. Ordinances have also been passed. No catchment, no permit rules in cities like Quezon City, Davao, Baguio, Cebu, and Iloilo. And incentives, some advanced green ordinances offer even tax credits. There are also other issues that we may have to think about. For example, we should have planted so many trees long ago. This is in order for there to be seepage of water when it rains. When there is too much water, as was said earlier, there is better seepage if the ground is vegetated. In permaculture, you are told not to keep any ground open. It really reduces the microbiome and the capacity of the soil to absorb more water. So ground cover, even weeds are better than bare land. And during El Nino, we will be able to see a lot of bare land, particularly because we sweep leaf litter. In urban environments like Singapore, they have what is called leaf litter management, where they ensure that they bring back the leaf litter ground if needed, but also as is if there is less resources, so that it allows for the leaf litter to ensure that there's microbiome and as well as ground cover, and it doesn't cause more erosion. Emergency measures include not only planting more trees, it will ensure better ground aquifer recharge, but also cool down our areas. And as they say, the best time to plant trees was 30 years ago, but the next best time is today. If we really do have a harsh super El Nino this year, we may not have the time to plant as many trees as we need, but it would still be better than nothing. Particularly, I would like to point out that our land policy has ensured almost the uh, the uh, near extinction of our Philippine dipterocarps, the pillar of Philippine lowland rainforests. Unfortunately, dipterocarps only fruit every anywhere from 2 to 10 years, and their fruits are only viable for about 1 to 2 weeks. Hence, if we do not exert extra effort to ensure the continued existence of the dipterocarps to reduce lowland erosion, we might see extinctions happening. Um, when they do fruit, they fruit a great deal, a lot, and those fruits need to be gathered, put in seedling bags, and planted wherever there is bare soil. That is not even being done by the forestry associations, etc. If we save the dipterocarps, I think there will be a lot less erosion. They grow very slowly, but still, I think we really need to do that. Swales is another thing that needs to happen in our terrestrial areas. Simple A-frames that determine the slope so that we can cut canals and not stop, but at least reduce the onslaught of rainwater going to the areas that will cause inundation. So this is double-edged. If we keep the rainwater upstream, if we keep the rainwater in our houses, we will not only have better water sources as things dry up, but we will also be able to prevent inundation and flooding in the downstream. And swales are also very good at doing that. I think my last point, which have not been mentioned yet, would be conservation measures in our coral reefs. We are expecting that with super El Ninos, the water temperature is so hot that it may cause bleaching. We need a triage system for coral reefs to be protected, but only with conservation efforts. Nothing drastic will really work anymore if we're talking about this super El Nino. But conservation efforts need to be focused on reefs that are in highest danger, that have highest diversity, highest endemicity, and highest absorption capacity for carbon. That kind of triage for which reefs to protect. I guess it's the same for which lowland dipterocarp forests to keep standing. But triage of conservation needs to be undertaken so that we can be sure that past this emergency, we can expand those areas and ensure that at least for the most vulnerable, most important reefs and terrestrial ecosystems, we were able to save so that we can expand them in the future. I think this triage has been recommended already by Dr. Al Liquanan of De La Salle University, and it's already with DENR to pass. So those here in the DNR, maybe you can help push this along. It needs an EO by the president, but this triage system and emergency measures for our coral reefs has been propounded by Dr. Liquanan, I guess 4 years ago. Adele, coral reef conservation, thank you for doing that. Thank you for putting that in the chat. That's also critical. Drastic measures like if there are any ice plants that are discharging cold water, waste cold water, you may want to discharge them in the sea, or I'm not sure, but really bleaching will be the problem of the coral reefs. As to our forests, forest fires when the conditions are too dry, diversity of planting will help with that, because some trees are resilient to fire. Fire breaks will also help with that. I'm expecting the DNR and other forestry associations to start doing this now, because the Sierra Madre will be very vulnerable. I guess that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Pat. Thank you for emphasizing some practical, recommendations that we can do in our homes through rainwater collection systems, in our watershed and forests, and even the coral reefs. So now we're moving on to our open forum. We thank all the participants who sent their questions in advance when they registered through the NWRB registration system. We actually received over 50 questions, and we reviewed these and organized questions into similar themes. So we lined up about 6 questions for today's session, but we also encourage online participants to type in your questions, and we're seeing a lot from the chat box. So we only have 20 minutes for the Q&A, and so I request our speakers and panelists to be concise with their response, so we can also have time for questions from our online participants. We do encourage online participants to type in your views and comments, because the NWRB team will gather these as part of their documentation and submit this to the management. So we received a lot of questions, and so let's begin with tackling some of these concerns. A lot of those came from water utilities. Can we flash on screen our question number 1 from our registered participants? So understandably, we have a lot of water utilities from our participants, and some of the recommendations might be perceived as better suited for large water utilities with over, let's say, 50,000 household connections. And some of those, can we move on to, okay, is this the first question? Okay, so let's focus now on the use of data and technology. And this has been raised in several presentations by our speakers and our panelists. So the question is, how can water utilities better use data analytics, technology, and digital monitoring systems to forecast water demand, anticipate climate-related risks, and improve decision-making during droughts, floods, and other climate-related disasters? Maybe this is something that we can direct to Dr. Tamarat Kotatep, and maybe to USEC CP, as DNR has been promoting the use of data and science in planning. Over to you, Dr. Kotatep. Do we still have Dr. Kotatep online?
Yes, I'm here.
I can take this question, Joanne.
Okay, sir. Please go ahead. Was that Engineer Roderick?
Yep. So
Go
very
ahead,
good
sir.
question.
Mhm.
What I would like to share to you is what we cannot measure, we cannot manage. So we cannot measure anything if we're not managing data. So the data is very important for us to be able to understand the hazard associated with climate impacts. In California, we use RCP 8.5, RCP 4.5. It's really very complex. But I think one of the challenges in the Philippines is we don't have enormous data to be able to understand historical perspective and projection perspective. So my recommendation, data is very important, but we need to start doing a better management, not only of our data, but also monitoring it. Do we have enough monitoring as far as gauging station is concerned? So we have to start asking those questions in order for us to go to the next step in stating digital monitoring if you don't have an infrastructure to be able to monitor and get the data. The analytics side of it is a later part, but the getting all this data from the monitoring perspective and combined of this perspective is another challenge that the Philippines is facing right now.
Thank you, engineer. Maybe a good follow-up question to this, and I think I saw this from the chat box, is where can the water utilities access, data from the national government? Is this available? Are there relevant data, hydrologic or climate data that are available and accessible to the water utilities? Maybe we can hear from, let's say, Doc Bill or from USEC-CP.
Yeah, is USEC-CP around?
I'm here, Doc Bill, pero
Oh,
I
yeah.
think you can
Sadya
answer.
pala.
Ikaw na.
Pwede ikaw. Yeah, I think as far as the water related data, no, I think Doc CP will be no more positioned to provide some answers here, no, but for NWRB, no, some of our water related data, particularly the data from our monitoring wells, are already published in our website, no. So we started compiling and putting up on our website, but I think that's also based on the in coordination also, no, with the USEC CP here, who is also spearheading, no, the preparation as well as the dissemination, no, of water related data through his through their office, no, the Water Resources Management Office, as well as the Geospatial Database Office, no. So I think for NWRB we started doing that, no, but I think within the year or next year we might be uh, publishing or uploading more relevant information within the NWRB website.
Okay, thanks, Doc Bill. John, just to add, no, I've been working really hard to release as much data as possible to the public. Not only NWRB data, at least nga for NWRB data, it's because I'm in the board of NWRB as well as ASIC Eric and Doc Bill is there. There's that agreement already that certain data sets are going to be very helpful to water service providers and to the general public. No? So that is an ongoing discussion. But there's a lot of data as well here in DNR. And the dilemma is always that when we release this publicly, there will always be somebody who will use it for purposes that we have not accounted for or that we have not predicted. Whether it's that they use it for showing that a certain water provider is not doing its job and therefore it can be a court case. We cannot predict what or if we release NRW data of water service providers, then somebody might say, okay, we need a refund or that this water provider needs to have their permit canceled. So that's the dilemma all the time when some people will utilize the data that we release for unintended consequences. So how do we deal with that?
May I say, let the cards fall where they may.
That's very easy to say.
Sunshine is the
Attorney
best
Ipa.
disinfectant after all.
Well,
That's an open question for now. maybe there's an international practice from California to manage and control and promote the responsible use of data that you can share, Engineer Roderick?
Yeah, so data is very important because we cannot manage the crisis without data. So I think there needs to be some transparency on how we will be able to disseminate this information and the limitation of this data. But mainly my concern is not just the data, but the framework on how they will be using this data. Because climate is very, very complex. And in fact, in California alone, it's really very challenging because we're trying to downscale global model into a local model and try to understand the hazard and impact. So a good framework needs to be established, not just the data, for us to be able to help different utilities in order for them to develop a risk-informed decision making to climate to deal with these challenges.
Thank you. So I'll let those points sit for now with our participants. We move on to the next question. So there was also a question on groundwater, and earlier Engineer Jay, highlighted groundwater as the first buffer and the first casualty during the during an El Nino period. So question that we received and we consolidated from the participants is, given increasing reliance on groundwater during periods of water scarcity, how can we ensure the sustainable use of groundwater, and what practical technologies or data tools, including real-time monitoring and mapping systems, are most critical for improving groundwater management and detecting depletion? May I address this question to USEC CP or maybe to Doc Bill?
Okay, shout out to our GMs who asked the question. Yes, it can be expensive, no, if we have monitoring wells to maintain, but practical for practicality's sake, the production wells that they operate can be used as a proxy monitoring for groundwater health or aquifer health. Actually, the water districts know this when their production level or static water level decreases, then they're pumping too much, or that the recharge of the groundwater has decreased, which is what we are now seeing today because of the drought conditions, because of the impending El Nino. I think a good kumbaga parang on a daily basis, they monitor the water level. From that, we can actually analyze the data and see where the sustainable extraction limit is. No, there are plenty of ways, but first we have to collect that data. No, and so what I'm saying is, even for production wells, that data should be collected.
Can I add to that? Here in Florida, about 100% of our water source is groundwater. So when I was at the utility director of engineering, we had over 100 water production wells into our shallow aquifer. And you're right, it's all about managing the groundwater, right? You can't extract more that's being put in. It's like a bank account, right? So we had extensive network of groundwater monitoring, also production records, where we could see the production of the wells and the groundwater drawdowns. And we'd have to manage that. We would sometimes shut off wells in one part of the aquifer or one part of the well field and turn on other ones. So it could be an effective tool, but I agree it does require a lot more management and data to be effective. Because, for instance, for saline water intrusion, once a well gets salted, you're never going to get it fresh again. So once you get that to that point, you've lost the well. So management and data capture is extremely important, but I think it's an effective tool if used and managed properly.
Thank you, Maurice, and thank you, Yusek CP. I hope that resonated well with the general managers that are present here in our forum. Let us now move to our third question. So this particular question, I think we may have to nuance it for small and medium-sized water utilities, because from the registration we saw that there's a lot of concern from smaller water utilities. I know that Engineer Jay and Engineer Maurice and even Dr. Piman presented earlier some practical recommendations that are time-bound. But for this particular question, maybe you can cite maybe your top three recommendations that small and medium-sized water utilities can take within maybe the next 90 days. Let's start with Dr. Piman.
I think he had to leave earlier, Joanne, because I think he's feeling under the weather.
Okay, or maybe to you, Jay, we can direct this question to you.
Sige. Hot seat kaya. Anyway, well, especially some of the speakers, the first thing to do is really baselining, no? Get some baseline information um on board the decision makers of the utility. This could cover even the water uses of large users of the utility, as well as the baseline for the operations like duction, etc., aquifer if they can afford, flow, river flows, etc. So baseline is quite important. Another one is WTM. It's really understanding the behavior patterns of your consumers. I'm sure a lot of the GMs would have a great, better handle on what's going on in their towns or in their cities. But getting this on record and in a regular monitoring schedule, I think that will be very helpful when they go into planning mode. No, that could be the next step for using this. This doesn't need to have to have a lot of budget to do this, but these are things that you can do immediately within the next 3 months or so.
Thanks, Jay. You highlighted in your response the need for water demand management. I think we can flash the next question, which touches on water conservation. So how can we convince our consumers that water conservation should be a must, especially during this time of long El Nino? And I would like to direct this question first to Dr. Kutatep, who had a very good slide on behavior change. Dr. Kutatep?
Okay, thank you very much, Salamat po. I think that's very, very important that if we just change the kind of utilities or infrastructures, it may not be that success that we try to solve the problem, solve the NRW that will solving the leakage, but the people still not cared about that and left the tap water open at their homes. So that I think that one of the important things that how can we set up certain kind of incentive or the incentive measures that to punish or to reward the people that yes, if you can reduce the certain amount of the water, for example, then what would be the reward that they will get, or other things like if you increase too much compared with the other, for example, if you set a kind of a standard that 5 people, how much you can use, then if you use beyond that, what does it mean? So I think that would be something that in the regulatory framework or the institutional framework that we need to propose, what would be the proper incentive or the incentive mechanisms that we can help change the people behaviors. That's what I would like to share. Thanks.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yes, please.
So it just can't be, let's just save water, right? It must be specific, What is the water provider doing? I mentioned that earlier, right? If they see NRW at 40, 50%, and then, you're not doing anything as a water provider to save water, why should I save water, right? And that's an important point to get the confidence of your consumers. And also what happens? What happens if we don't save water? Show the results. So what happens when El Nino comes and what the stresses are in your system and what's the result of that? So I think you got to kind of convey that message. And I think, coming from the utility background, we always need to make sure that our customers have all the faith that we're doing everything we can on our end to save water. So it's their turn on their end.
Joanne, I think can I add to that, Joanne? Did we lose Joanne?
I think so.
Please go ahead, Peter.
I'm very tempted to say that, we need to raise probably the tariff for water to Meralco levels, siguro, no? Because, right now we're experiencing some agitation in the use of Meralco for so expensive energy and source of power. So much so that it becomes automatic, no? It becomes automatic for people to save up on water. If they really appreciate the burden of, paying for water, then perhaps they will start saving water as we need to, no? But that's not really the question. I mean, this probably not because we are committed to provide affordable and accessible water. But I think the bigger question is whether the utilities are committed or are serious enough to sell the concept of conservation, to their customers. To many utilities, they think this is lost income. There's less revenue for them if they start asking people to save up on water use. And so much so that it becomes contradictory to their culture, to their, business operation to ask them to save up. So I think it's really the paradigm shift should be in the thinking of our utilities that saving water will actually provide them with more water, water to spread around, to cater to a larger territory, to a bigger consumer base. So I think it's really, the messaging should be consistent, should be forthwith, so that should be the attitude of our district. Conservation means more water for them. It's not less revenue, it's more water for them.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. I'm mindful of the time, and I think we could get some questions that were typed in by our online participants. Can we show some of these questions? Let me pull out one. There's one question in the chat box that says, are there national policies or government support programs available to help water service providers improve climate resilience? May I direct this to USEC-CP or to Mambibet Gozun?
Sige. Starting in 2024, DNR has become an infrastructure development department as well. Having been provided a small budget for actual water supply system development. This is, of course, limited to water districts and LGU-run facilities. We cannot provide any grant to private water service providers. But What we have proven over the last 2 years is that even with a small amount, it actually goes a long way in terms of impact to communities that are unserved and underserved. We are poised to provide water to about 400,000 Filipinos, no? So it's with such a small amount. And I'm mentioning this because I think water supply is one of the most cost-effective and high-impact infrastructure projects that the government can provide.
Thank you, Yusek CP. And I'm aware that the national government also is trying to operationalize the unified resource allocation framework and is trying to steer some of the bigger water utilities, the credit-worthy water utilities to commercial finance. So that's also a source of financing for water supply and sanitation projects.
But the flip side of that, John, is that for small water utilities, LGU run and small water districts, all grants coming from government, they will have to make sure that they are able to do a full cost recovery of their system. No, there wala na yung ano, we do away with straight out grants and dole outs. Everything has a counterpart and everything has to be sustained, financially viable projects so that we don't repeat projects year in and year out.
Right. Thank you for stressing that point, Yusek CP. Another question that we received from the chat box is, what role should local government units play in supporting climate resilience initiatives? I know that we have a climate change law in place, but I would like to maybe tap Dr. Ma'am Bibet Gozon to just remind us what is this critical role for local government units. Ma'am Bibet? Bibet online?
She may have stepped out, Joan. Maybe Attorney Ipat can fill us in.
Well, of course, there is the declaration of emergency so that they can use their emergency funds. They should also have already their local LDRRMC to get that in line. They should have local on the ground heads of emergency mechanisms working to ensure that there is on the ground response, especially to those that are lacking potable water. I'm also thinking desalination plants for our coastal communities. There are a few available that are portable and for at least for emergency where potable water is non-existent, desalination plants might help local governments at least provide potable water for coastal municipalities. There's also other policies that they could consider, particularly there are advisories on labor for work. There's also advisories by the DepEd for extreme heat. The local governments could have local El Nino task forces so that they can respond to emergencies that are top level, triage the types of emergencies that they can meet. There's a DA administrative order on the water that is provided to rice. Rice is a very high water demand crop, and planting them with mungo in the meantime might help stave off the the water demand, or at the very least convert to the system of rice intensification or the alternate wetting and drying system, which is climate friendly and uses less water. There are many more very specific things that LGUs can do, and it's a matter of sitting down with an El Nino task force and figuring out what are specifically needed by the sectors in their municipalities and cities.
If I can, Joanne, finally.
Yes,
Sorry,
Ma'am Bidlet.
I
Go
couldn't.
ahead.
My audio didn't want to work earlier. In addition to everything that Ipat has said, I also just want to add the fact that the LGUs can actually also should actually lead by example. No, definitely they should have a task force on El Nino and identify all the doable things. But one of the things that we pushed in the past is for the LGUs within their city hall to actually have rainwater harvesting and storage. No, so they actually lead by doing that, and then they promote that among the big water users, and eventually even like if you have subdivision developers, this is not short term though, this is more medium term. All subdivision or industrial estate developers within the area can be asked to already include rainwater impounding. It can be lagoons, which was done in for example in San Nicolas in Ilocos, so that we also then actually provide a water source for agriculture, which, as you pointed out, actually accounts for 80% of the demand for fresh water. And then for areas, urban centers, which have big companies that are water intensive, like paper companies or beverage companies, beverage production companies, together with the DNR, arrangements can actually be made to actually reclaim that treated wastewater and use it. Again, ideal for agriculture, no? Kung wala na talagang source, then it can be treated all the way up, of course, to the level of drinking water. And this is not a concept anymore. In 2004, when we had the El Nino, here in Metro Manila, we actually worked with Manila Water for their wastewater treatment plant in Magallanes kasi it meets the standard, so they're allowed to actually dispose it into the receiving water body. But rather than itapon lang, kinuha yan, the president of Manila Water put up a big tank with a means for fire trucks to go in and get that water. Yun ang ginamit para sa pagdilig, no, ng mga Central Islands, and it becomes very very useful also for use of our firemen, no? Kung usually pag panahon ng grabe ang init, mas mataas din ang risk kasi ng sunog. And as Ipat pointed out, actually marami eh. We just don't have enough time to go into the things that pwede kaya kailangan talaga pagtulungan, ano? The private sector, DNR, the local government, the water district, to try to put all of this in place. And they can support, of course, efforts for water conservation and water efficiency. Isa din yun eh. Hindi naman kailangan maapektuhan yung gamit mo, but you can be more efficient in the use of that water. All within the water demand management, of course.
Thank you, Ma'am Bibet. Unfortunately, go ahead.
Sorry, one last thing. It would be helpful for the local governments to ask the DPWH how it has implemented the law, the rainwater harvest.
The barangay.
716. Kasi
Yeah.
sila naman ang may duty dyan eh. Sana doon nilalagay para hindi bumaha.
Yeah, true.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we've reached the end of our Q&A, but before I wrap up this session, may I ask all of our speakers to turn on their cameras for a quick photo op. Are we good?
Thank you po.
Thank you. So I would like to thank all of our speakers and panelists for today for sharing your valuable insights and your recommendations to address El Nino and climate change impacts on water supply and sanitation services. I also want to thank all of our online participants for your active engagement and thoughtful questions. If you have additional questions, and those questions that were not tackled in the chat box will be collected by NWRB. And I think NWRB will share their email address so you can send in these additional questions. So today's discussion has highlighted both the scale of the challenge and the importance of coordination across sectors. There's also a strong emphasis for using data to find those triggers for drought and good governance and collaboration among different stakeholders. So we hope today's forum contributes to stronger collaboration and more proactive action toward building climate resilient water and sanitation for our communities. Thank you, everyone. And I turn you over now to Claire. Claire?
Thank you very much, Ma'am Joanne, and as our moderator. Salamat po. And to our panelists for that insightful discussion. And thank you as well to our participants for your thoughtful questions and active participation. Today's conversations have shown that climate resilience is not the responsibility of one institution alone. It requires collaboration among national agencies, local governments, water service providers, communities, and development partners. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. For those who are asking for the presentation, we have messaged you in the chat box. So please accomplish all the forms that we have posted in the chat box in QR codes so that you'll have an access to our Google Drive containing all the presentations plus additional information materials about climate resilience. Maraming salamat po. And to formally close today's program, may we invite the Executive Director of the National Water Resources Board, Dr. Civilio David Jr. Hi, sir.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Okay, so good morning po sa ating lahat. So first, let me begin by thanking all our participants, the speakers, the organizers, our development partners, LGUs, and especially our water service providers, for your active engagement today. So we extend our appreciation to my colleagues with the National Water Resources Board and of course the Global Water Solutions Inc. for bringing together more than 300 participants for this important and timely gathering, considering that we have a looming El Nino event this year. So from the I would say, from the opening remarks, to the keynote messages and throughout, the technical presentations and panel discussions, one message has been consistent. Climate resilience is now central to the future of water service delivery in the Philippines. Climate change is here, so affecting our water systems, our operations, and the communities we serve. Despite abundant rainfall, the Philippines still struggles with uneven distribution, seasonal scarcity, and fragmented governance. Today's sessions highlighted the real benefits of strengthening climate resilience, improve operational efficiency, reduce non-revenue water, diversification and more secure water sources, stronger contingency and emergency response systems, as well as better watershed protection and more data-driven and science-based planning. So these are not abstract concepts, they are practical solutions already being implemented by many of our water service providers. So we are also reminded that resilience is not only about infrastructure, it is about preparedness, good governance, water conservation, watershed management, emergency planning, and strong partnerships. These elements form the backbone of a truly climate resilient water sector. So as we close, we encourage all of us to move from the discussion to implementation, as exemplified by this discussion. Let us apply the lessons we learned today in our local context and continue sharing best practices and innovations that will secure our water future. So thank you for your commitment to water security and climate resilience. Maraming salamat po and mabuhay.
Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you once again to all our speakers, Ma'am Bebet Cozon, Dr. Tanapon, Dr. Piman, Engineer Texon, Engineer Maurice Tobon, Engineer Roderick de la Cruz, Attorney Maria Paz Ipat Luna, and to our moderator, Ma'am Joan Dulce, and of course to ASEC Planta and Yusek David. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.
Maraming salamat.
Yes po. Thank you for making today's event meaningful and productive. I hope everyone, lahat po ng mga participants natin ay may nakuha at merong i-apply sa kanilang mga serbisyo sa ating publiko. Thank you so much, and we hope that the insights shared today will help strengthen local actions toward more climate-resilient water systems and communities across the Philippines. Please accomplish the attendance sheet, our post-test survey, the evaluation form posted in the Zoom chat box and Facebook comment section. You may also access these in the QR codes shown on your screen. The evaluation will help us make better events in the future. Kindly accomplish it immediately or take a screenshot of the QR codes to access it until 5 o'clock p.m. today. Presentations and certificates of participation will be sent to those who have accomplished the forms and who have followed our Facebook page. Kailangan niyo po i-follow ang aming Facebook page, National Water Resources Board. Thank you po. And on behalf of NWRB and the Global Water Solutions Initiative, thank you very much po. Stay safe and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Claire and NWRB team.
Thank you.
Salamat po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Doc Bill.
Thank you rin, Jay, and Claire.
Thank you. And the WRB team, thank you.
Thank you po.
Salamat po.